Anyway, I'm going to start by reading our prayer. I'll do it in English today. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
So we didn't get very far again.
Would you like to do my
Yes, please, David.
okay, while we were in North Carolina, we got to see Wendy Sister's favorite version of Jane Eyre, which was a movie which reminded us of the BBC production that we watch every year. We started to watch it again yesterday, and I think that Charlotte Bronte is quite probably the finest writer in the English language since Shakespeare. And so today, in honor of Jane Eyre, I'm going to quote a little bit from it as she's about to start a new phase in her life. I lingered at the gates. I lingered on the lawn. I paced backwards and forwards on the pavement. The shutters of the glass door were closed, and I could not see into the interior. Both my eyes and spirit seemed drawn from the gloomy house, from the gray hollow filled with rayless cells, as it appeared to me, to that sky expanded before me, a blue sea absolved from taint of cloud, the moon ascending it in solemn march, her orb seeming to look up as she left the hilltops from behind which she had come, far and farther below her, and aspired to the zenith. Midnight darkened its fathomless depth and measureless distance, and for those trembling stars that followed her course, they made my heart tremble, my veins glow when I viewed them. Little things recall us to earth. The clock struck in the hall, that sufficed. I turned from moon and stars, opened a side door, and went in. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, David. Very interesting. Very, very nice one. Well, we are now on Exodus 12, verse 14.
Mm-hmm.
We've really torn into this book and going through it very rapidly. So if somebody would care to read verses 14 and 15.
I'll read since I won't be.
Okay, sure. Since you have to leave early, we'll give you a tip. Hi, Suzanne. I'm going to call on you later today.
Okay. This day shall be to you one of remembrance. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord throughout the ages. You shall celebrate it as an institution of all times. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the very first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day to the seventh day, that person shall be cut off from Israel.
Okay.
That doesn't last part. Wait a minute. Oh, eats leavened bread. I'm sorry. I'm so used to seeing unleavened. Well, that's certainly timely.
Yes.
As the hospitality committee is just starting Seder plans. So.
Okay. And any other comments? I mean, we've been discussing the Seder. This is like all of a sudden Moses has been told what they're going to be doing in the wilderness, because all prior to this time, God has not said anything to Moses about the why this celebration. We call it a celebration, but in actuality, it's a mourning period.
Mm-hmm.
We don't revel in the idea that these people are to be killed or were killed. We are to understand what the meaning behind all of this is. Yes, David.
The thing that's getting me about this particular passage is that they're not free yet. They're still slaves.
That's right.
And
Uh,
what are we planning for the Passover?
I'm going to recommend two things. One is a poem. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Yeah.
And Maya Angelou, it writes about things in a way that is very important. So that brings us into the same mindset. Okay, read the speech that Martin Luther King gave at the Lincoln Memorial. Read that during this time period. You'll get other people's ideas about the significance of this. Well, I looked that phrase up, the caged bird, and I found it. We do not, when we sing down in the valley, we only sing a couple of stanzas from a 14-verse poem. And the line, bird in a cage, is what is mentioned by a prisoner in jail. So the poem is totally about a Negro slave who has been imprisoned. The crime is not known, but the words are. But when you think about it, when people are enslaved, whether it is physical enslavement, there are other forms of enslavement that occur, including mental enslavement. People who are suffering depression. And it is similar to the concept of a bird in a cage.
I'm sure familiar with that.
Anyone who has had it for a brief period of time or knows somebody who has done it, I wrote about this in three separate poems, because there are three phases that one has to go through. One is recognizing and accepting the bemoaning of being enslaved in any situation. The second is recognition about what you can do. That's the psychotherapy, that's somebody reading about his situation or her situation, and trying to understand. And the third is doing. That's what we're reading. We've recognized the situation. Now we're being advised as what needs to be done to change the mindset. And then the rest of the book of Exodus is based on how you free yourself of that.
We sum it up in the program much shorter. The trip 3A. 3A. I mean, we got slogans for everything. Awareness, acceptance, action.
Yeah, that's right. And so you have to, it addresses, this whole book addresses many, many situations that we find ourselves in when it seems hopeless. Another way of looking at it, when somebody says it's impossible until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so there are many, many things that each of us have gone through in our lives that whether it's us saying it's impossible or we hear it from others, you have to come up with a game plan. You have to, as Ricky was talking about, you have to be aware, but eventually you have to do something to pick your own self up by the boots.
Impossible just means it takes a little longer.
Yeah, for each person, some people can get through things quickly. Some people it could take a lifetime.
Well, some people say impossible, they just don't do it. But
That's right.
The impossible just takes a little longer.
Yes. And so that's one of the messages. And if you think about why it's important to remember the bad times and what could be done even by slaves after a period of time and understanding. And so that's another message. When I remember one year at a Passover Seder, I said, we're going to put the Haggadah aside. What does it mean to you personally? And the answer, and we just went around the table for the entire evening, and everybody learned from each other, which was an interesting thing, because every other person not only remembered previous Seders, but they also remembered events in their own lives and how it applied. So what we're reading is super important and very meaningful it's not just a Jewish experience, it's a universal experience. So with that, I apologize for sermonizing, so we've been also called the people who remember. I brought this up several times, and this is why we remember, okay? Because it says, it says, you shall celebrate it as an institution for all time. Okay, this is a commandment. This is not, we don't think of it as one of the commandments, but yes, it is important to remember. And just like I mentioned a week or so ago with the war in Ukraine, it made me remember my ancestry and Sue's ancestry. And it makes other people remember, because it is a form of an attack on your heritage as to who you are. It's meaningful. So by remembering, it becomes meaningful. Enough said. Any other ideas about verses 14 and 15?
Don has his hand up.
Yes, Don.
Two quick points, Marty. Okay. One is the extraordinary emphasis on yeast in Exodus. I mean, out of all the possible issues over which you could lose your soul, yeast would be the last one I would think of if I had to invent one. So I'm wondering where that, I know the symbolic reason for going out in the desert without leavening, but anyway, I just made that point. The other is with this terrific emphasis on slavery, that it always shocked me that David and Solomon built their kingdoms with slaves. And there were even in the American antebellum South, there were Jews who were slaveholders and still would celebrate Passover with a Seder while their slave brought them.
That's right.
So people, the comprehension of this is very difficult. And I mean, people are people and things are what they'll be, but this is such a crucial point in the development of Judaism.
Yes. It is, and it is it was new for that time, and it was new for this time. You are very correct. It's something that
Has to be renewed. Good.
that's right. Remembered.
Yeah,
That's
good.
right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Suzanne.
Um, Don's probably aware of this since he mentioned symbolically. I've been taught, and I want to say it was not in church, that that leavening is symbolic throughout scripture to be representative of sin. So therefore, by eating unleavened bread, you're, well, I don't want to say you're not eating sin, but you're getting away from sin to a more righteous position or state, or I got several thoughts going through my head here. Part of the problem with the Israelites being in Egypt was they knew who God was, but at the same time, over all the years they were living there, they started to abandon him and started worshiping other Egyptian gods. So by symbolically getting rid of sin, they're bringing themselves back to the Lord.
Okay. I was going to take it on a slightly different note. The same yeast that you use to leaven bread is also used in beer making. And we do know that there was a lot of beer consumed. We have found evidence of that archaeologically.
Sure.
So this is a sobering event. Let's put it that way. I had to throw in some levity. Okay. So I'm sorry. I'm just in a crazy mood. Any other comments about these? Suzanne, at some point when we start discussing some of those things, feel free to take about 10 minutes so to go through that, give you some extra time. Okay.
Go through what?
What you sent me. All the different.
That was weeks ago.
I know, but it butt in and say, what you need to say with it, because I thought it was interesting.
Well, fortunately, I did make some notes for myself, although I did not finish. But I certainly can get started and
do a little here and next and so forth, because I think it's a slightly different take on things that some people have not looked at before from the standpoint of archaeology. Please.
Yes. Okay.
Sounds interesting.
So
Yeah.
so you can do what you think should be discussed now before we pick up the story. Remember, we're in a break period in the whole story. We've been discussing the Passover service, but there are some aspects to this that are picked up in other ways. And so, Suzanne, go ahead and say a few words.
Okay. I just want to bring my notes up so I can push myself here. Oh, okay. What I'm about to tell you is you can find in a book called Origins of the Hebrews, which was written by a Dr. Douglas, I'm going to massacre his last name, Petrovich.
Petrovich, right.
Okay, well, that wasn't.
It's okay, however.
Okay, and okay. There's, I guess we could say there's presently two theories about the Exodus. One is the late Exodus theory, which most mainstream archaeologists subscribe to, and that was started originally by William Albright, and he lived between 1891 and 1971. And he said there was no evidence in the land between, and his time frame was 1400 BC through 1200 BC. However, there's a place where the Israelites were, according to the Bible, were supposed to have lived, which is called nowadays Avaris. And because of the findings there's like another group of people that think this time frame of 1400 to 1200 BC is wrong, and that it should be earlier. And if we shift the timeline earlier, then the evidence does seem to fall in place that the Israelites were there originally. In Moses's time, this particular place was called, now I'll massacre this one, Tirun Nefer, which means pleasant journey. Which that's kind of funny when you think about, the Israelites, and they are going to go on a journey. He found, or I don't know if he did, the archaeologists in the area have found names in hieroglyphs that, again, give credence to the fact that the Israelites were there. They found the names of Joseph, Manasseh, Ephraim, Sechem, who is the grandson of Manasseh. And we know that because that was recorded in Joshua 17, chapter 17. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can't share some of these graphics. Hang on and let me click this and see if it works. Did that work?
Yes,
That's it, did.
very good.
We see them.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what you're saying. Do you see this hieroglyph? These
Yes, we see it. We see it very clearly.
Okay. All right. Now we're moving along.
And we also see all the other windows that are open.
Have your fries and your
That's okay.
You guys are a tough crowd.
No, we did just stay put. Just stay put.
Oh, okay. Well, now,
just minimize that. Yeah, minimize it.
yeah, I can't.
Over the
I know where it is,
Oh.
but
your mouse isn't.
She
doing
can't
what
get the
you wanted
mouse
to
up
do.
to that.
right.
And if you slide this one over, you probably will get back to your.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Oh, here we go. There we go.
There we are. Okay.
Oh, no, I clicked the sound thing.
They can be downright dangerous. 234,000 people are hurt in ship-related bathroom accidents every year. Why?
That's our cases again. Keep going. Keep doing fine.
Introducing
Okay.
Stone.
And I thought I kept a lot of things open. You outdo me. There.
Okay. Well, I wanted to show you this.
Right.
I
And,
hear a radio or
No, it's
something.
not a radio. I clicked it.
Oops.
Hang on. I
disappears right in front of your eyes, almost instantly. Unlike traditional mats, Sutera's bath stone requires zero cleaning. Since water evaporates in seconds, it literally can't harbor bacteria. Plus,
Now I
the
have to
bath stone lasts
find-
5 times longer than any standard bath mat. Simply use the handy
No,
dandy
that's
tool
not
to
it.
freshen it up every few months. Easy. When the bath stone was first introduced, it sold out almost instantly, and the reviews are in. It absorbs water like magic and doesn't make you sweat. I feel safer getting out of the shower.
They are a wonderful addition to our bathrooms. Love how they absorb the wetness. It dries up quickly with no dampness or smell.
No.
Super impressed and definitely recommend.
It's not that window. Why don't you guys talk and give me a second to find out?
Today. Try the bath stone now.
Okay,
And
okay,
share.
we'll do that. We'll do that. And we can move on a little bit.
Oh,
Uh,
I have to unshare here.
Got it.
Oh, I think it stopped. Okay. Okay, good. Oh, no, it didn't. No, it didn't. It moved on to the next one. Okay, go
All
ahead.
right.
I'll unshare.
Okay,
You name it. This U.S. Army engineer built a device to give Americans
in any
And then you
case,
mute your-
outside in the dark, and he's destroying the three.
Okay, we should be okay now without. until she
okay,
finds the stuff.
okay, we'll let Suzanne do it. I'm sorry for the delay, but that's okay. So why don't we, any other questions about what we read before Suzanne was ready to get started? Well, let's go on then to verse 16. If somebody would read verses 16 through 20.
20, okay. You shall celebrate a sacred occasion on the first day and a sacred occasion on the seventh day. No work at all shall be done on them. Only what every person is to eat, that alone may be prepared for you. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your ranks out of the land of Egypt. You shall observe this day throughout the ages as an institution for all time. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. No leaven shall be found in your houses for 7 days. For whoever eats what is leavened, that person shall be cut off from the community of Israel, whether he is a stranger or a citizen of the country. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your settlements, you shall eat unleavened bread. It's a bit redundant.
It is, but
But they're
one
making
of the
a point.
reasons obviously was to, remember when things are important, they are stated over and over and over again. So this is nothing new in our from what we've experienced before, but it goes into a little more detail. And one of the things that I found is that the description of the month that this is supposed to be done, it was originally called Aviv, and AVIV, like in Tel Aviv.
Oh, okay.
And Aviv is it means wheat, which I thought was interesting because of the role of the matzah and everything coming from wheat. But I would assume Tel Aviv is where wheat farming was done at some time. Gail, when you were in Israel, was that one of the things from that region?
Was what one of those regions?
The wheat growing regions around Tel Aviv?
No, I wasn't anywhere near Tel Aviv. I was up in the north in the Galil, and that's where all of the olives are.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
By the way, can Susan stop? Can she get rid of the share? This is very distracting.
Okay. Suzanne, can you go off of,
I'll get rid of it, I think.
if you just stop the sharing, that's
Okay, there we
right.
go.
And then find what you need to find, and then we'll be able to pick up. You just
Yeah, I'm
raise your
still-
hand.
I'm still looking for it.
Okay, when you find it, just raise your hand and we will be able to get back to that. Anyway, any other comments about verses 16 through 20? Well, there are some comments. Any comments in your different comment, books on the Torah about this? There, one of the things in verse 16, no work at all. Rabbi Plout says, comments that this expression is also used for the other festivals, but for Shabbat and Yom Kippur, the prohibiting term is not any work. They just changed the wording, which is of interest for those who like to discuss semantics. Tradition considered the latter as more rigorous. In other words, what you do for Shabbat and Yom Kippur is more difficult. For instance, making of a fire for cooking or smoking is permitted on Passover, but not on Shabbat or Yom Kippur. And the phrase "may be prepared" refers to the concept that what can be eaten on the holy day may be cooked and prepared on that day, and then only, according to some rabbis, if such labor could not be done beforehand. So it is permitted on this holiday. And then in verse 18, as I started to mention, the month's ancient name was Aviv, but it's now the month of Nisan. Okay, because the first day of the year, it begins at Rosh Hashanah, not Passover. Okay, yes, Don. I think you're muted, Don.
I'm unmuted now, thank you.
Okay.
I want to mention that Rabbi Norm did email me some Midrash references to my earlier question about how many Israelites may have been lost along with the Egyptians. I won't pursue that here, but I did want to say it's strange to insert these laws at this point when the Israelites had not even begun to escape Israel.
That's right.
And the reference to Aviv or wheat, they were living in the Nile Delta, which was the best wheat growing area, which had just been devastated by the plagues. So I find it really fascinating that leavening is so, I'm repeating myself here, but leavening is so important, and to the extent that if anyone ate leavened bread, they would literally be cut off from the tribe.
Yeah, because they're not following the rituals that go along with the belief.
Right, but anyway, why this law is inserted at this point? I mean, I imagine Moses and Aaron can barely keep up with what's going on, let alone take notes on the details of the law.
Well, you raise a good point, but that's why I said what I said. It seems impossible until it's done. So that's a simple way of looking at it. It is simple. A lot of hands. First Ricky, then Gail. Michael, was your hand up? Oh, okay. So Ricky and Gail. Ricky, you're muted, and Gail, Gail.
Somebody must have muted me.
Okay.
Yes, I did. You were talking to yourself or
I
something.
was?
Yes,
No,
you
I'm
were.
referring to you guys. All right.
Okay,
That person shall be cut off from the community of Israel, whether he is a stranger or a citizen of the country. I've never heard them yet talk about a citizen versus a stranger, or in this case, a citizen and a stranger. So that
it's
jumped out
not,
at me.
it's not them, it's God. It's God talking.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
Moses
let-
still hasn't told them
of a
yet.
citizen of a stranger or a citizen of the country. So then God is referring to the Israelites as citizens of a country that we don't have yet.
Correct.
Okay.
It's okay. Yes, Gail.
Oh, I was just going to say, Don, there's a reason why this time warp seems odd to you. If you would read Friedman's book, Exodus, you would find the explanation is that the priests wrote this after the fact. And that's why there tends to be a confusion there. As to what Suzanne was
Yes.
talking about, or Susan was talking about, again, she's looking for proof of the Exodus. Well, Friedman has a very good explanation, but it's just not that it's, 2 million people. It's a small group of priests that actually made the Exodus, and they're the ones who wrote this book. So it makes a lot of sense, and everything kind of falls into place.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment on that. Some people have said, and I think we mentioned it before, that this is a compilation of 3 different sources. The priest, the P, the E, and the J.
Right. Well, part of that is that the
That's
priest wrote the one that had to do with rituals and rules and things like that.
Exactly.
You can kind of spot their inserts because it's so, exact. And
That's right.
They make lists. Yeah.
So we recognize that. Thank you for bringing that up again. Yes, Don.
Yeah, Gail, I did read Friedman's book and another one of his. I guess I should have rephrased my question is why did the authors choose to insert the law at that point?
Well, they did it after the fact. I mean, so.
I know, but why didn't they, looking back in retrospect, they had to insert the God's declaration of the law at some point along the Exodus?
Well, they wanted the people to be aware of their history.
Okay, so I won't.
Sometimes in the other versions, and I'm just posing this, I do not know for sure. This is where this is a question for the rabbis. They may at some point, it may have been realized that the directions for what they were supposed to do in the wilderness, the ritual they were supposed to perform in the wilderness, was not mentioned in the other 2. Okay, I think that is sort of what it may have been edited. I addressed it many years ago, and I'm sure the rabbi will be able to address this. It's come up several times. There were lots of different versions that occurred because this was transmitted orally. It was then written in Proto-Hebrew. That was translated into 9 different Aramaic tongues, and then also into Greek. And so a convention had to occur around 7 AD. Okay, how do we reconcile all these little slightly different stories so that we have one main thing? Christians did it too. You read the St. James version of the Bible. There are multiple versions of the Bible until the St. James version was adopted. So this is something that has gone on in other groups as well. So possibly they realized, okay, we have to make, do some editing here. This is important. And it is God inspired. And yes, we've been doing it this way for all these years. We have to show that this piece of evidence, where it was, when it was inserted and what, we're not quite sure, but it would make sense to give directions to the Jewish people at this time how to conduct their ritual.
The Torah is a teaching tool.
Yes.
It
Yes.
doesn't have to be exact and factual at every single jot and tittle. But the story and the theme and the teaching tool that it really is what's really important. Not
I
having
tend to agree with Gail, but after saying all of that, I have to recognize that the Orthodox
right.
would never say what I just mentioned
Oh, no, of course not.
because of their belief that all of this was given by God.
Well, when you have a really strong belief, you
Yes.
can't allow for any kind of error at all. None
That's
at all.
right.
And
That's
you
right.
you just get harder and harder and harder in your beliefs.
And so,
Where the reform has a little more relaxed and understanding of what's going on.
yes, Michael.
Was interesting what Gail was talking about when she says it's a teaching tool. It's also a thinking tool. It makes you think about different things. One leads to another, and so it.
Good point.
Yeah, I think there could be also what you said about the Orthodox, an Orthodox rabbi. I know quite a few rabbis between New York and Los Angeles that I talk to often, and there are some that actually have a balance. That are not many, but there are a few that a little bit more on the side of modern thinking, if you will, that have offer a little bit of a balance there, and I think that's if I could use the word healthy, I think that's a good thing.
It helps to understand things a little better. By the way, what I was relaying is information from a site called My Jewish Learning, and they have
A very good.
representatives of the three branches of Judaism, the main branches of Judaism, who write this commentary. So you have to, and it breaks it down accordingly. So you can anybody who wants to do it, it's more than welcome to look that up. It's a good source for this discussion. And so, but let's get back to the Torah. Okay, Don.
It's just my real quick total digression, but FYI, Naftali Bennett just traveled secretly to Russia to meet with Putin about a ceasefire in the Ukraine. So you'd like to know.
Oh,
Could you say that again, Don, please? I missed.
repeat that.
Naftali Bennett, Israel Prime Minister, just traveled secretly to Russia and met with Putin about a ceasefire in Ukraine. So,
Yeah, I know they have the Israeli government behind the scenes has been trying to work as a mediator in this, and so hopefully something will come about. We'll see. I hope they're successful. Because there has to be, like in any other thing, when we talk about balance, we have to look at, the situation from both sides. And that's the role of a mediator. So we'll see what happens. That's good news. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Any other discussion, though, based on the prescription and about this? Any words about matzah? We've discussed this before. Why are there holes, tiny little holes in rows along the marketed matzah? You don't remember. It's been, I'm bringing it up again. In the manufacturing process, those rows of tiny little holes are not designed to break the matzah along those lines. They are so that, God forbid, if there's any pocket of air, that it will have a way of escaping in the baking process. Okay, that's all it is. It's a very practical reason. It's not anything else. And that you can go home with. I was going to ask the rabbi also about we've discussed this before, but people may not remember. Shemura matzah. Okay, some of you may be familiar with that. It is a prescription for how it is grown, how it is gleaned, how the wheat is gleaned, how it is baked, and who can do any of these things. Okay, and so you will find it sometimes on a shelf in an Orthodox established establishment, and it's round. It's a larger and round matzah. Okay. Having learned about this, and I think I may have read this before, this is a takeoff on upon this subject, and the title of this is "That's Shemora." Okay, and what struck the poet is that this whole, when I heard "That's Shemora," it reminded me of "That's Amore."
Yeah.
So to the tune of "That's Amore," we can sing "That's Shemora." But I have a lousy singing voice. When the moon hits your eye like a big matzo brie, that's Shemora. When the world starts to shine from the guilt you have spent, that's Shemora, because Shemora is extremely expensive. Bells will ring, ting-a-ling, ting-a-ling, and you'll sing of the Haggadah. Hearts will play tippy-tippy-tay, like a gay Gansa Megillah. When the stars make you drool over matzo ball soup, that's Shemora. When you dance down the street with high held Seder plate, that's Shemora. When you walk down in a dream, but you know you're not dreaming, it's a grepsa. Excuse me, but you see back in old NYC, that's Shemora. So I wanted to bring in some levity here because of all of the things going on and the seriousness of a ritual.
You really succeeded, Marty.
It's silly, but it's there.
It's good.
Anyway, so in verse 24 through 28, if somebody, wait a minute.
No, you're 21.
I jumped ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, 21.
In verse 21, because we mentioned last time about two separate services one for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, plus the service for the Feast of the Paschal Lamb. And then it was merged together, and we wind up with our current Passover Seder. So verse 21, if somebody would want to read verse 21 through verse 23.
Sure, I can read it. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you lambs according to your families, and kill the Passover lamb. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop, whatever that is, and dip it into the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out of the door of his house until the morning. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. And ye shall observe this thing, an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass, when ye be come to the land which the Lord will give you, according to as he hath promised, that ye shall keep this service. And it shall come to pass, when your children shall say unto you, what mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover. For that he passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians, and delivered our houses. And the people bowed the head and worshipped. And the children of Israel went and did so, as the Lord hath commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they.
Okay, I know you read it a little more, but that's okay. We can bounce back and forth. Yes, Gail.
Interesting, and I wish that Steve was here because he could back me up on this. I know the consonants that are used in the word Passover and halt are the same. So when they talk about passing over, it also could mean halting or stopping. So just interesting, and for those who are interested in Hebrew words.
Well, let's think about it for a minute. Why, in our reading, we stopped the basic story to take a pause to go over the ritual, the Passover ritual, and then we resumed. Could that be part of the meaning?
Well, he halted from killing anybody, and he also passed over. So that's what I'm saying.
That's another possibility.
It's only that the consonants are the same. It doesn't mean it's necessarily the same word, because Hebrew is very odd that way. So,
yes, that's another reason. Can you think of any other that you have to stop? Think of this as a new paragraph or a new chapter in their lives. They have to stop. And they have to stop what they were doing before and pick up something new. You are passing over from from the old to the new. So you can understand why the same word can be used in multiple ways. And we can discuss this story multiple ways, which has been done by many rabbis over the years. Any other comments? Yes, Don.
It's an extension of a problem I had with the Israelites borrowing gold and silver from their neighbors. But this implies that there's one family per house, but there's maybe 1 million Israelites, and most of them are day slaves. And I imagine that they would be living in multi-family dwellings with outdoor facilities. And so I'm trying to imagine at that time observing these dietary laws, which seem to be one family per house, and not being allowed to go out during the night could be. I'm just trying to fit together what I'm reading here with what I imagine to be the conditions at the time.
Sure. There, on multiple levels, the words, as Gail was pointing out, but there are multiple levels here. Maybe it's designed to stop us and start thinking about these very things. Okay, because when you devote time to remember, you're stopping yourself from proceeding to do the ritual. And then you can pick up later. So the remembering process is by design here. Yes, Gail. What does Friedman have to say?
Well, there's another odd thing too, is that the
Yeah.
word commandment and unleavened bread also have the same consonant.
Root. Yes.
Yeah, but it's only because of the little marks around it that we know that it's used in a different way. But Hebrew is really interesting, but it's not easy all the time.
There's much more to Hebrew, because each letter is also a number. And those of you who have read anything about the gematria, there are books written about words that have the same numeric value, letters and words that have the same numeric value. And they even use that as to get deeper meaning. Some people, it's a different way of interpreting Torah. And they are able to link different passages this way, that there are words of having the same numeric value. And lo and behold, the stories are parallel.
This is why translation is such a tricky thing. And we sit here and we read the English version or the St. James version or whatever, and we think, well, this is what, but it's not. It's not always that apparent or true. And we have to be really careful. And that's why we need Steve and the rabbis to explain these things to us.
Yes, I agree entirely. It adds a totally different dimension. By the way, what we're discussing now, the gematria, there's a movie by the title is The Symbol Pi. Okay. It's in black, in high contrast, black and white, and it deals with the Hasidim. It deals with numerical interpretation of Torah, and it involves mathematics. It involves computers. It involves a fly, the role of a fly. It involves with God, trying to get closer to God, and what the main character has to do just before he gets the answer, what he has to do to save himself. It's a little gory, but then when you think about it, he even plans what he does in a certain way so that it can turn off his mind, because he becomes obsessed with this process. It's a very interesting movie. It's a little gory for those people who are squeamish. I'm not going to recommend it to them. But otherwise, if you think you can get through that, it's a very interesting discussion about what we're talking, what Don is talking, I'm talking, and others. So it's just for your own personal interest. I know the comment was made by David about hyssop. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Suzanne. Go ahead.
Yeah, Marty, I just want to do a little bit and maybe so I can have more time to refresh myself here.
Okay.
But I do want to show 3 pictures here, which I think are.
Please, go ahead. Go
good
ahead, and then we'll resume.
there. Oh, here we go.
There you go.
Oh, we don't want Derek. Okay. And let's move you guys here. Okay, where my cursor is right now, this is part of what's been excavated at Avaris. And back here was thought to be the palace where Joseph lived. And this little pyramid structure has a statue inside, and there's debate whether the statue inside is Joseph or whether it's Jacob. And I forget what this building is, but this here is another angle of the palace, and there's 12 pillars here, and it's believed that each pillar represents one of Jacob's sons. And this here is the statue that's inside. I have another picture. This is a drawing of the statue. I do have a picture of the statue, but I was having trouble finding it in my computer files. You know, people look at this coat and see that it has a few different colors, and they immediately want to say it's Joseph and his multicolored coat. Well, that coat's been long gone. And it's unlikely that Joseph dressed like this in his position in Egypt. So I can see where, and they certainly would want to honor Jacob, his father, because that's kind of, you know, what Egyptians did. Now, no bones have been found in this pyramid thing. So that could be Jacob, because he said, you know, to take his bones. So it is up for debate.
Okay.
And I mean, there's more, you know, like with the different pharaohs, and this is the author of the book. And here's a quick timeline that Jacob was in Egypt 1876 BC. Moses was born in 1526 BC, and the Exodus is 1446 BC. That's the what we'll call it the new theory. I don't know if they ever gave it a name or not, but it's not the late Exodus theory. So anyways, that's all I want to say for right now. There is plenty more to say, but I do need to refresh myself.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to a little bit next week, and we'll do it in stages.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. David, you mentioned hyssop. It's not, according to Plout, it may be marjoram. Okay. And the herb marjoram. And it's not found in Egypt. It would have been imported from elsewhere. I'm not sure where in the Middle East at that time it grew, but it was not found in Egypt. So this was something that obviously was imported. The same topic of importing comes up again when we discuss the Mishkan, because certain things are not found in certain areas that where the Israelites are going to migrate. So any other questions? When we read verse 21, some people think that this is the beginning of the J version, okay, the Yahwist version. Okay, and so it's so we've had the P version, the E version, back to the P, now the J. So it's okay, but we just have, this is based on writing style. Okay. Any other comments about what we just read? We alluded to some of these things last week too, because this is Moses telling the people what to do, the elders, I should say. So it is, so yes, it is, Ricky said, it is being repeated again. Any other comments about the blood? Okay, we didn't, I know we skipped over some things and everything, but we can move on a little bit. We have the next round, we can go over some of these things. Yes, Michael, please. You're muted, Michael.
Okay.
Thank you.
You may see me stepping away back and forth. I'm having this morning a very difficult time with my dry eyes. So
Oh,
that's why I
sorry.
just want to point that out, because I don't want to disrupt the class or anything, but I have this morning, it's bad. During the week, it's been okay, not bad, but just now, but for this class, so I apologize for that, but I can't help it.
It's okay. We understand.
Okay.
Did you want to say anything about what we were reading?
No, I was away.
Okay.
I stepped away. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hope they feel better.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So, any comments about the destroyer? You remember when God speaks to Moses, he said, I will be passing over. Is God the destroyer?
No, he's not.
Correct.
He is not.
This is like an angel directed by God.
And I think something else, Marty, is that we can connect this to Ukraine right now.
Mm-hmm.
God is not the destroyer, just as we might say that Mr. Vladimir the Terrible is bringing this on himself. This is a war of one. And in a way, the Exodus is a war between Israel and Egypt, because all the Israelis wanted to do was to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they want. They felt they'd worn out their welcome and they wanted to leave. And God is simply helping them leave.
Thank you. Very well stated. This is why we're supposed to remember this story. As we say, things happen in many different ways. Ricky, be safe.
Take care, Ricky.
And so this applies to many worldwide situations. Yeah. I see a couple of. I guess you were waving to Ricky. Okay. Okay. But if you have a question, just speak, or a comment, just speak up. Any other discussions there?
Marty?
Yes. Yes, Don.
I'm not sure the Israelites really wanted to leave. I mean, they originally just wanted a few days to go out in the desert and worship God. I mean, it started off, they didn't say we want to leave, because I mean, it's like a huge chunk of the Egyptian workforce. So it kind of developed into we want to leave situation. It didn't start that way.
Well, we know that God told Moses to tell the Pharaoh to give us leave so we can worship our God. And that is stated again and again and again, but there's no prescription other than you'll do this over a 3-day period. And so either this was an addition that somebody recognized had to be added in. What are they supposed to do? If you just went out somewhere and prayed as an individual, that's okay. Would your prayer be the same as somebody else that went out with you? So if indeed that occurs, there's a difference. You need a ritual to make it orderly. Otherwise, everyone's going to be wishing for something different. And they may not be wishing the right way for the intended purpose. And I think that's why we have a ritual, any ritual. Having been on the ritual committee, Ruth Ann is on the ritual committee. She understands that. And it's to allow worship in unison. It's okay to have your own prayers, and space is made on the Sabbath in order for an individual to worship and say a prayer at a specific time during the entire service. But otherwise, that service would not be an orderly. Okay, the Passover service is order. It's a ritual.
The Wailing Wall would be an exception. The Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. That doesn't look too organized to me.
How?
Have you ever been to an Orthodox synagogue?
Yes.
Yes.
And
yes.
during the service, with all the davening and all of but if you listen, if you take time to listen, they're all on a different page saying it verbally. Their prayers are not identical. They're saying the same thing, but at different paces. Some are racing through it by rote. They're just doing it. And others are trying to go through it slowly because they want to have meaning in what they say. And it can be very disconcerting to some people. At our temple and in other Reformed temples, it is more organized.
When I attended the Chabad in Glendale, where Betty and I come from, the rabbi, Backman, when he was doing this, and he says, if you come to a certain passage, dwell on it. If you like it, don't turn. Just continue on that.
Yeah.
He was very vocal
That's
about
right.
that. Yeah. So I understand that.
And but to some it can be very disconcerting. So if it's a ritual where one is looking at the hyssop, the other is thinking about the lamb, the other one is thinking about the matzah, and each one doing it at the same time, it's going to be disorganized. And that's going to draw out the ritual. Each one by themselves can go through the ritual, but they'll be doing it at a different pace. And so part of Judaism is recognizing the individual, but also the individual's responsibility to the community, because it's the community that's going to do it. And so that may be why ritual is so important here. Yes, Gail.
I was just going to say, I think last night at service in particular, it was really a sense of community, because we were all thinking really, and the rabbi, that was his theme of the evening, was Ukraine and what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the reason we had a big turnout is because everyone needed to be there to have a sense of community because we all had this one thing we were concerned about.
Yes.
It was really very moving, I thought.
Yes. You mentioned that to us, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. But that's the reason for it. It doesn't mean you can't have your own individual prayers, and it doesn't mean you because having space during a service in which you can say your own prayer for whatever is important to you at that time, recognizes the community is recognizing the needs of the individual.
Right. Well, we do that during our service too. We have those
Yes.
moments where I'm trying to remember, it's not the Amida. What is it? Ruth Ann? What is
It is
that?
during the Amida.
It
It
is the
is.
Amida. Okay,
It
where
is
we
part of
say,
it.
okay, now do your own thing for X
That's
number of
right.
The
minutes.
Amida.
That's right. And it's important. This is the same concept. So what occurred later, quite a few centuries later, the all for one and one for all, okay, concept, and it comes up in sci-fi, in Star Trek. They word it differently, but it's the same concept. This is where it's starting, right from the get-go.
One thing, Marty, I find with the Orthodox rabbi is seriousness. It's very serious and somewhat strict.
Yes. Yes, it is. Because it's a ritual. It's a sacred
Yeah,
ritual.
it's the importance of the
That's
importance
right.
of the importance of that ritual that keeps everything together with the Orthodox.
Yes, and that's more important for the Sabbath. It's more important than some of the other rituals.
And I get personally, I get confused a lot because I went from Orthodox to Reformed, and there was such a really it still is very confusing to me because the ritual is, and I don't want to ruffle feathers at this point, but I guess it's really hard to explain without maybe getting people upset, but there's a reason why when you go to you wear a hat when studying Torah in a synagogue, that you cover your head, and then in the Orthodox, in the Reform, a lot of this goes away. So what I see should be respectful is not. It's very hard to talk about because I don't mean to make waves or anything like that, but there's a confusion there for me. Can you understand that?
I've gone through this transition myself, but still, when we're conducting the service, I will wear a yarmulke.
Well, I'm not talking about you in particular, but
that's right. But other people too. They change over time. Some don't, some do. It depends on needs. It depends on what you grew up with, things like that, and it becomes a habit. It's okay. You didn't hurt anyone's feelings.
No, well, I'm glad about that, Marty, because there are things that are hard to talk about because you don't want to hurt no one's feelings. I don't, and no one here wants to do that. But that's where my personal confusion comes in. What is respectful? What is not? How does that change? What is this all about? The whole thing, it's very complex for me sometimes.
Okay, I'm going to let Don say a few words, and then I'm going to think of it. I have something I would say to you too in response.
To me, the biggest point of departure to where we are now
we have
is the the importance of up close blood sacrifice at that time, and the importance of blood sacrifice right through the first temple, the second temple.
Hmm.
I mean, it was so important. But now on Passover, we don't have a lamb in the house and a ritual knife. I mean, getting up close to the blood and the flesh is just not part of Judaism anymore. So we kind of forget that. I mean, we go through the rituals, but they don't really involve the hot blood.
Exactly. Symbolically today, that's the purpose of dipping your pinky into the glass of red wine and representing all of the plagues, but that's what it does. And symbolically, we use mezuzahs. The rabbi was talking about that, and also tefillin. Okay. Wrapping your arm, to place a phylactery on your head and on your arm or hand. These are ways of getting away from doing other rituals, but some hold the rituals very dear. But I was going to say something in response to Michael. The question was raised among rabbis, what about all of these people during the Spanish Inquisition that said they converted and they still held on to certain rituals? And they still, in secrecy and hiding over the years, they were on the outside Christians. On the inside, they were Jewish. But they lost some of the words, but they still knew they had to light a candle or they had to do something for the ritual. So the rabbis got together and they discussed this over the centuries, and they said they were still Jewish. They were still Jewish at heart. And even though they may have even forgotten why the ritual was being done, they were still doing it. Rabbi Norman discussed this last year. And so in an age when some people, Pastor Bruce isn't here, but he suddenly realized he had Jewish ancestry in doing his genealogy. He wants to know more about his where he comes from. And that's why he attends. And he finds that there is a part of him that our discussions resonate with him. That's why he attends. And I think that it's just, that's human makeup. But I think that doing it as a community, doing the ritual as a community, you can still do it yourself. But unless, as Michael will say, unless you remember it from your youth and you have made it part of your rote behavior, over time, you may lose the meaning.
All I can say, Marty, is that from my point, I was born into an Orthodox family. And so I grew up, I was bar mitzvahed, and I taught I was taught by a rabbi, Orthodox. And so that's how that's what I know. And that was instilled in me as I growing up, and that's still a part of me. So when I come into something else, it becomes a little, confusing. If you were born as a reformed Jew and you were born into it, that's how you're raised. See? It's all about the way you're raised and what you learn.
So that's right. Now add to that the differences in the rituals over time, as from the diaspora on. There are differences in the way foods are prepared. There are different types of, we've discussed this before, different foods that are served. The prayers may be the same, but even the order may be different from one community to another. If you pick out some old prayer books, you'll say, oh, they did it differently this way at that time. So there are a lot of changes over the centuries. And so what we do today at our temple is sort of like a blend. It's sort of like a blend. As somebody once said, we're reconformadox. Okay. So take your pick. Yes, Gail.
I was going to say to Michael, if you ever go to Jerusalem, go to Mei Sharim, visit all the different synagogues that are in Mei Sharim. Each one is from a different country. Okay?
Yeah.
They are as different night and day. There
That's
is
right.
such a variety and such a richness in Judaism. There isn't one single thing. And I think that you really appreciate
That's right.
I think that's one of the reasons that Judaism still exists, is because it's been able to adapt itself no matter the culture that it's living in. So it's that adaptability that, you know.
And so, you know, I just think that's an important understanding, especially in today's world. If we were back in the as recently as the 1800s, okay, everything is done a particular way, and that's the way it has to be. But remember, the Orthodoxy comes into being after the Reform movement. It's a response to the Reform movement. A lot of people think it was original, but it isn't. It comes after. It's in a reaction that the Reform is moving too far away from what was intended. Yes, Don.
Going back to your point about the Inquisition, Marty.
Yeah.
The Jews who became secret Jews, crypto Jews as they were known.
Yes.
Were also the derogatory name was Marrano in Spanish.
Yes.
Okay. And Marrano means sow. And just a little north of us is the town of Marrano.
Yeah.
Which may have been, I mean, in New Mexico, there are pockets of crypto Jews who like Friday night and don't know why. And, town of Marrano could be the same. And another point, and with great apologies to our Christian members here, looking back to the end of blood sacrifice when the Second Temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and there was no place to have a ritual sacrifice, and rabbinical Judaism came into effect. That was coincident with the end of blood sacrifice when Jesus became part of the Judaic story, because all Christians at that time were Jews. So there's an overlap between the end of blood sacrifice in Judaism because of the loss of the Second Temple and the official termination of blood sacrifice when Christianity began to grow. I find that period so fascinating, and apologies if I've got anything wrong and insulted our Christian members, and I know.
But there's much, much more to the sacrifice of the lamb.
Yeah.
What is the true meaning of the sacrifice of the Paschal lamb? We've been reading it.
We're reading it. Yeah, we're reading it.
It's redemption of the firstborn, so you don't have to kill the firstborn.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and if you don't do it right with an ass, and you forget to sacrifice a sheep for the ass, you got to break the ass's neck. We read that last week. Okay. Yes, Suzanne.
I just want to assure Don that he did not say anything wrong. In fact, I was sitting here thinking
Yeah.
that Yeshua was the ultimate blood sacrifice. Well, at least Christians think of him being the ultimate blood sacrifice. So there was no longer any need for any type of animal sacrifice. And I don't know all the reasons why the temple was destroyed. I know the Romans came in and destroyed it, but I'm guessing that God allowed that to stop the blood sacrifices after the crucifixion. So Dawn, you were absolutely right. And you did not say anything wrong. You said it correctly.
Okay. Thank you. A couple of things here. Getting back to the Torah, Moses is continuing and telling if you go to verse 24, which is part of what David read, that this is going to be an institution for all time, forever. Okay? You're not supposed to lose sight of the fact that this is of the purpose of this ritual. And it also says that in verse 25, when you enter the land which the Lord will give you, as he has promised, you shall observe this rite. So this is a way, this whole Passover service is saying thank you. Okay, it's gratitude. It's not just going through a ritual for the ritual's sake. There's a meaning behind the ritual. This was a very important event. Okay, and we have to remember it. We have to remember it as such. Then, and if anyone wants to chip in, just say so. So it is a sacrifice to the Lord because he spared the Jewish, the Israelites, when he was slaughtering the firstborn of the Egyptians. So this is something that is so very crucial to remember why we do the ritual.
And
it is not just for saying, oh, we remember. It is more to it.
And you can tell by the importance of the Passover holiday is because not only does it have to be kosher, it has to be kosher for Passover.
Yes,
The
that's
foods.
right. It's even, you are very, very correct. Very correct. So that this is a ritual that is quite important. Ruth Ann, did you have your
I
hand
was just
up?
gonna say, as far as you talk about kosher for Passover, I mean, that is also very much a rabbinic thing. So depending on, where you live and who the chief rabbi was of the little village where your ancestors lived and whatever, what was kosher for Passover and what was not, changed. So that in and of itself is a whole nother discussion.
Well, I was born and raised in Nogales on the Mexican side, and it was really important for them to be very, very kosher over there in Nogales on the Mexican side. And so
Yes.
I thought you get a big kick out of that. It's not there. I mean the Bronx, not Nogales, the Bronx.
I know what you mean. But what you're saying is very interesting if you go down to Mexico and how they conduct a service. It is a very Orthodox service, Sephardic Orthodox service. And you will see lots of differences in things like the tallis that is worn. Okay, it's more like a shroud that they wear. Okay, They drape it over their shoulders, but at
Yeah.
the same time over their heads. And it borders on Hasidim,
Mhm.
a Hasidic type of interpretation.
I would think that the Jews from the whatever, not even for Middle Ages, okay, came back today and went to an Orthodox congregation, they would be very comfortable, okay?
Yes.
But any Jew before the rabbinic
Yes.
period would come back and they would think that we were not Jews. I mean, it's just, so like talking about the Jews from the Torah and the Jews from today, or even from the Middle Ages. I mean, we're like two totally different groups. Because it's just, the rabbis made such changes. And like I said, it depends on what rabbi, you listen to and who intermarried with who and what, and, how the rules are today.
Yeah.
But a lot of Judaism died. I mean, talked about Orthodox, it stopped in the Middle Ages. All
Mhm.
thought processes stopped back then.
Right.
Oh,
Good point. Yes, Gail.
I was just going to say, and within the Orthodox, quote, quote, there's neo-Orthodoxes.
Mhm.
Let's see, there's probably 4 or 5 different branches of when Michael refers to Orthodox Judaism, I'm not sure which branch he's talking about.
Exactly.
It's not that simple. It's just
No, it's not.
And the same thing with conservative, and the same thing with reform.
Yeah.
You have different ways of conducting things. So it's very, very, that's why there's an old saying, when you move into a new community, don't try to change the way things are done at the temple. Change the way you do things at the temple. So that you're part of the community, because it's community oriented.
I was thinking about, we have that tradition, in our temple about doing Ein Od and extra Ein Od.
Yes.
A lot of places do that.
It's not, I know, but our congregation for years, I mean, that was like a thing. And there's still a few of us that insist on
Do it. Yeah.
I do it because that's what I was always accustomed for. It had nothing to do about Beth Shalom Temple Center.
No, I
But
know.
when
We had a
we do
member
it,
in the choir that did it, and we all
That's right.
followed along.
because then you remember Aaron at the same time. Okay, it's as simple as that. That's why people do it. Anyway. So what about the verse 26? Again, this is like the beginning of the 4 questions. Yes, Grace.
Thank you. I put a note in the chat. So
Okay.
I was reading, I have a children's Jewish storybook, and I was reading it a couple days ago, and there was an explanation between why the robes of tefillin are striped and they are not plaid with blocks and squares. So what it told me is that the stripes mean it's infinite. It's just infinite, continuing, ongoing, forever and ever. And whereas with the square, it's closed. So I was hoping, because I was thinking of the pictorials that Suzanne shared with us, Suzanne, excuse me, that, there was allegedly Jacob in the striped robes, and I thought, yeah, well, that explains a lot, that it's ongoing, like the Torah, it's ongoing. And I believe that possibly speaks to, reform, because at some point, the times that we live in are changed and changing. And so that's where the reformed, like my Siddur is a reformed Siddur. So I'm just, I'm learning a lot, and I appreciate everybody's comments and what we're looking at today. But I thought I found that very interesting. It gave me some clarity in, the stripes on the roads.
When you're born into Orthodox Judaism,
Yeah,
it's endless. It's just completely endless. What you learn, these little nuances are just absolutely endless. If you're born into an Orthodox Judaism, and it becomes such a learning process that it just never ends. There's always something around the corner and attached to something else, and also there's also superstition connected a lot with the especially from people that came from Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
All kinds of little superstition things, right, Ruth Ann?
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with being Jewish. That just
That's
has
right.
to
That's
do with
No,
where they
it's not
came
cultural.
from.
That's
It's
cultural.
not. It's
That's
not
right.
Jewish. I know that, but it somehow it creeps in there. It becomes part of the landscape, so to speak. But it's
Well,
not Jewish.
I think that's because Judaism is more than just a religion. It's kind of a culture too. So but again, it varied from town to town and shtetl to shtetl. So
It varies from
Things change.
grandparents to grandparents.
Okay,
Yes.
I want to change several other hands are up, and I want to recognize David first, and then go back to Suzanne. I'd like to try to just get one more thing in, so we don't have to go back to it next week.
This is actually a Wendy hand.
Oh, okay. Oh, you raised the wrong hand. Go ahead.
I just wanted to stir the pot a little bit, and we don't need to make a discussion about it, but when you were talking how there were pockets of Judaism around New Mexico and here, and that I forgot what word you said Marana translated to, but Marana translates in different languages. And when Marana is a Spanish language, it translates to pig.
Yes.
So, so it all depends on where you're looking, and I know we're looking at everything through Judaism, and that could be pretty egocentric. We really should know that there are other people with other thoughts, but that was it.
No, it's an important one. It's an important one. Who knows, who was there at the time, but yeah, maybe that's where they raised pigs in the area. I don't know. Good point. Good point. What I wanted to do is Suzanne, yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Grace. I had a little trouble hearing who was wearing the striped garments and who wasn't.
And the picture that was believed to be Jacob, that you said you thought that would be Jacob.
Jacob or Joseph.
There's a young man with striped robes on.
But that's not. But in that child spoke that you were saying, didn't you say that there was a difference between stripes and
Squares?
squares?
Yeah, the stripes indicate infinity. They're never ending. They're
A
continually.
line that never ends.
Oh, so it wasn't somebody that was wearing a striped garment in the book.
No, this was
The
on
picture that
the.
You're talking, okay, I had trouble hearing you. Your sound kind of came across my computer kind of funny. So
Okay.
Sorry
Okay.
about that. It may be, we got 6 to 8 inches of snow last night, so my satellite may be a little fuzzy.
a little fuzzy. Okay.
Okay. What I wanted to do was to mention something else about the Passover service. We have we have 4 questions that the youngest is supposed to ask. If David, since you read this, would you reread verse 26?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And we go to verse 26 as quickly as we can. If I can find it here. 25, 26. And it shall come to pass, when your children shall say unto you, what mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, that he passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt. And when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses, and the people bowed their head.
Okay, just that. Because now the word I want you to reread that, David, a little differently, and mention, and when you read the end of the sentence, instead of saying our houses, emphasize the word our houses.
Actually, Marty, my translation says, for that he passed over the houses.
But in others it says our.
Okay, so that ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, for that he passed over our houses of the children of Israel in Egypt.
Right. And it changes the meaning, because in the you have 4 different types of children.
Yeah.
And one of the responses is that you say, in one question you answer, because it happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it happened to me in my ancestry. Okay. And in another question, you answer our. Okay. So you are, it again, is the individual. And some people will say that all Israelites, past, present, and future, were there, were there when all of this is happening. And even with the giving of the Torah, especially when it comes to the Torah, it's not just it's for me, but it's the individual and the community. And I think these are very important messages that are being stated here. And this even comes up in some of the Passover discussions at services. So that's why I say you don't go through a ritual just for the sake of doing a ritual to remember something. There's something deeper. There's something deeper here. And so we've hit on just 2 things that are deeper. Yes, Gail.
So isn't that similar to we were all at Sinai when the commandments were set down?
Yes.
The same thing.
It's the same thing. It's a ritual. It's a ritual of binding your arm a certain way. You just don't slap it on any which way. There's a design of how you lace the lanyard through between your fingers and around, how you wrap it around your arm, and the phylactery that's on that, and also the phylactery on your forehead. All of these are prescriptions to remind us of the meaning of everything, not just for the sake of doing the ritual.
It has to have a meaning. There's a meaning behind the whole thing.
And so when we read through these things, try to get the meaning by emphasizing certain words. And that's why I say it's all important, because then you suddenly say, there is something here, and it's teaching us a value. This is the value of going through these rituals, if you will. And as we go through the rest of Torah, all of the things mentioned here are going to be added to. They will come up again. Okay? Since somebody brought that up, it will be mentioned again and again.
Yeah, Marty, but what you're saying is you're bringing a very high value by what you're saying. That's an extraordinarily, very well said what you're doing because of the value you're putting behind it. So
Well,
that's
thank
great.
you. But I get it from this, that there's value in what we're reading. And it still pertains to us to this day, which is another, it could be an hour discussion. So then if somebody would read David, then after, what did the Israelites do?
Okay, I'm gonna start with verse
If you would
29.
just, from the people then bowed in homage.
Okay, I think this is verse 29.
No, it's the latter half of verse 27. It'll be like a two-liner.
Okay.
The latter half of 27 and 28.
For that he passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt. And when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses, and the people bowed their heads and worshiped. And the children of Israel went and did so, as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they.
Right. And so from the standpoint, who are they bowing down to? Moses
To the Lord,
or God
to God.
or both?
They might be bowing down to God through Moses, but I
Yes.
think they're just bowing down to God.
Yes, I agree
And
with
Moses
you.
is probably bowing as well, and his brother Aaron.
Yes. And I think that it's very important when do you know that it's some of us, when we read certain passages during the Sabbath service, do you notice some people will bend their knees a little bit? Okay, it's paying homage. Okay, it's sort of a tribute, recognizing the supremacy of God.
In fact, we're commanded to do that during the Elenova.
Yes, exactly.
It specifies that.
That's where I'm going to end.
Yeah. And you're also presenting yourself to God. When you're in a synagogue praying to God, you're presenting yourself